Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone that was involved in bringing this gathering together, because I think the timing could not be better. I think that, and Josh already alluded to this, that we really have, what we have to recognize, we have two kinds of cultures in agriculture now. The first is still the predominant culture, what some people call the productionist agriculture, some industrial agriculture. And this is the agriculture that emerged since the beginning of the 20th century. And I don't need to explain to anyone here how it operates. But the important thing to keep in mind is that the current public policy is primarily determined by that entire agriculture system. And quite naturally, everyone involved in that agriculture, whether you're a farmer or an input supplier or a food processor, you're going to do everything you can to keep the current system going, because you've made huge investments in the current system. And so I think we have to get beyond the notion that these people are simply resistant or they're not paying attention. They're simply paying attention to what they've done, what's been successful for them. And given the huge investments they've made, they're going to do everything they can to keep the system going. And that's really what drives our current agricultural policy. It's the vested interests. And we have to recognize that that's the way things are at this point, and that it's what's going to be the driving force. Now, the thing to keep in mind, however, is that we're rapidly coming to a point where this predominant agriculture, this predominant culture, is going to have to transform itself, because it cannot continue. It cannot continue primarily because it is enormously dependent on a range of resources that are no longer going to be there in the future. It's dependent on cheap energy, it's dependent on unlimited natural resources, it's dependent on stable climates, all of those things which are necessary to sustain a monoculture of specialized systems, which has been the success of the system in the past. And it's important to recognize, I think, that this system has turned food simply into a commodity like any other commodity. And it's traded in the market based on financialization like any other commodity. And so everybody that's involved in that system is going to try to extract as much wealth from that system as they possibly can. And of course, as we all know, there are certain players in the system that have more economic power than other players, and therefore they are the ones that have the advantage, and they're the ones primarily that determine our current agriculture system. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that there is a second culture, which is the emerging culture. And this, instead of a productionist, industrial kind of agriculture, is more of an ecological, nature-based agriculture. And I don't know whether or not this culture is emerging, because there certainly have some people who have been the wisdom of the past, people like Sir Robert Howard, Liberty Hyde Bailey, Aldo Leopold, more recently Wes Jackson, who have all recognized that this system that we've created, this productionist system, is not sustainable in the long term, because it simply doesn't have the relationship with nature which ultimately drives the food system. But whatever it is that's driving this, whether it's now that old wisdom coming to the fore, or whether it's the beginnings of a realization on the part of farmers, on the part of input suppliers, on the part of others, that as we think even a little bit into the future, we know that that system's not going to work anymore. And so this system now is a kind of what some people call a new agrarianism. And this is a radically different kind of agriculture and food system that we're going to see in the future. And it's going to emerge not so much because it's a better system than the other system, it's because we're moving into a different kind of world, and therefore it has to change to meet this new future. It's also because there's a growing realization now that the productionist system is not going to work in the future, that it's already beginning to see a kind of food systems failure. And in fact, there's a new book out now, just came out in paperback, called Food Systems Failure. And it's a series of essays based on a conference that was held in New Zealand right after the food crisis of 2007 and 2008. So at this conference, the presenters were all asked to address a simple question. And that was the food crisis of 2007 and 2008 sort of an aberration, a one-time event that just happened to happen, or is this part of a food systems failure? And without exception, all of the presenters said this was a food systems failure. And this series of essays go into great detail as to what are the aspects of the failure of this system. Now, this isn't just a few academics saying this. This isn't just a few weird new agrarian farmers like myself. This isn't just some environmentalists who are saying this now. There are also now some key people in the field of economics that are saying this. A good example of this is Michael Porter, who's one of our leading economists at the Harvard Business School, and Mark Kramer, who published an essay in the Harvard Business Review, January-February issue of 2011, entitled Creating Shared Value. And they write this article to the business community. And basically what they're saying in this article, if you want to be successful in business in the future, you can't operate by the old playbook anymore. The old playbook being the way you do your business is you marginalize your raw materials and labor in order to extract as much wealth and profit in the system further up the supply chain. And you externalize all of your environmental costs and all of your social costs so that you can internalize more value, generate more profit inside your business. And they're arguing very persuasively that if you want to be successful in the future, you can't do this anymore because our labor and our raw materials are now becoming so marginalized that you're not going to have those resources available in your business in the future. And if you're going to continue to externalize your environmental costs and your social costs, our natural capital and our social capital is now becoming so deteriorated that those costs are kind of inside and hurt your business. So if you want to be successful in business in the future, you now have to operate under an entirely new, different basis of shared value. Sharing value with labor and raw materials, sharing value with natural capital and social capital. It's the only way that it's going to work in the future. Now, when I read that article, I thought, wow, here we have some of our leading economists now saying something that some of us have been sort of feeling in our gut for a long time, but haven't articulated in the way that they have. So these are some of the issues that I think that we need to keep in mind, and the reason that I think that this meeting is so timely, because as we think about the future, as we think about the kinds of new policies that we're going to need for this transformation that's going to take place, that is already to some extent taking place, we have to have some policy ideas, some policy, what I like to call beacons, not models, because we think about models of, something that works in North Dakota is going to work in California, so all we do is transfer it. But beacons are shining light on a new way to think about things, a new way to do things, and then how do we then apply that in our own ecologies and our own communities. And so this is it's part of the task of groups like this coming together and beginning to think about, to envision, to create the beacons of policy that will work for the future as this transformation takes place. And we don't have to worry so much about making the transition happen. The transition's going to happen because all of the resources that have sustained the system in the past will not be there in the future. And what we have to do is get a head start to be ready for them. This is where I think some of Jared Diamond's insight from past civilizations is so important. After studying past civilizations, he came to a simple conclusion. Those civilizations that anticipated the changes coming at them, recognized the importance of their ecological capital, and got a head start preparing for them, were the ones that survived. Those that failed in that exercise were the ones that collapsed. And this is really the kind of situation that we're going to be facing over the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 50 years. And this is why I think that Wes Jackson's idea of a 50-year farm bill was so significant. Because what Wes understood was that a current farm bill every 5 years is driven entirely by short-term politics. You know, who can get what out of the policy that's going to serve their own interests. Where if you think about a 50-year farm bill, you're thinking about where do we need to be 50 years from now? How do we anticipate the changes coming at them and get a head start preparing for them? And then we backcast from that. What do we need to do every 5 years or every 10 years in order to get there 50 years from now? And that's what this meeting's all about. And so it's an important task. It couldn't be more timely. And I am very pleased to be here to be a part of it and work with all of you and see what kind of beacons we can come up with in the next few days.